I reached for the hem of my dress and lifted it over my head in a single, graceful motion. There were no words spoken, only silence and the sound of my breath. 3 pairs of eyes gazed at me as if they had never seen me before. I did not hurry or smile. I let the stillness do the work, then I walked toward Jake, slow and steady, letting the moment stretch with every step, and when I reached him, I leaned in and kissed him slow, certain like I already knew none of them would stop me before we dive and take a quick. Jake had both hands locked at my hips, moving with a kind of focus that erased everything else. My cheek pressed into the pillow, breath catching as he kept his pace steady and hard. It wasn't gentle, it was fast, determined, like he couldn't stop even if he tried. I moved with him instinctively. Fingers curled tight in the sheets, heat surged fast, each motion building higher. A cry slipped out sharper than I meant, and he didn't slow. His grip shifted, pulling me right onto my knees, one arm sliding around my waist to keep me consistent. I reached back, needing contact, and he responded with a low, rough sound that hit somewhere deep in my chest. His pace faltered just briefly, then he leaned back into me again, slower, now more controlled. His breath hitched as everything tightened, chest against my back. The moment hitting us both, I sank forward, shaking, skin flushed and nerves sparking. We stayed like that for a while, quiet, close, neither of us moving much. Then he let go, dropping beside me on the bed. I was still catching my breath when he finally spoke. "This may be a mistake," he said. I turned my head, lips brushing the pillow. "You regretted?" He gave a quiet laugh. "Number, but I think my dad or Tyler might know something." I looked over. "Why, they've been acting strange." Tyler inquired as to whether I had been disappearing, and my father continued to give me a look that suggested he had already figured it out. I rolled onto my back, allowing the sheet to slip down to my waist. He hesitated, but I assured him that I was not concerned. I stretched my body, still humming. I smiled, stating that it was more exciting this way. The knock came hard, with 3 sharp raps that caused me to jump. It was early, and I had not yet finished brewing coffee. I was wearing a soft t-shirt and still had sleep in my eyes. I opened the door halfway. Rick maintained his position. Jake's father's expression was composed and his eyes were steady, as if he had predicted the morning. He stated. I pulled the door wider, keeping my face neutral. "And didn't expect you." He entered the room without waiting, his gaze moving through the room. He did not sit, but instead turned to face me. I believed it was time for us to engage in conversation. I folded my arms in contemplation of you and Jake. I did not respond, and he approached me. "You may believe that I have not observed the way he stares at you or the manner in which he exits the room, as if he has not slept in days." I did not flinch, and it is possible that he has not. Rick stared for a beat. "I'm not judging, but don't insult me by pretending it's nothing." I never said it was. He looked at me again, slower this time. "You really don't care how this looks, do you?" I stepped in close enough for him to feel it. "I care," I said, "just not in the way you expect." His gaze dropped, lingering. The shirt didn't hide much, and I didn't try to adjust it. I let the silence work, then I reached for his hand lightly and let it hover just above my leg, close but not touching. "I know you've been watching," I said. "No need to pretend." His fingers twitched. "You could have come earlier," I whispered. "Why today?" No answer. I leaned in close enough for warmth to pass between us. "Tell me, Rick, are you present to prevent this?" I tilted my head, brushing past his cheek. "Or are you simply weary of being excluded?" I kissed him slowly and firmly, and he did not draw away. Rick did not speak after the kiss. His eyes briefly looked down before returning to their original position. A moment later, something within him changed, and one of his hands slipped to my waist, while the other moved behind my neck, drawing me in once more. This time the kiss was firm and profound. He moved with purpose and weight, and when he backed me toward the couch, I did not resist. He tugged my shirt higher, and I raised my arms without breaking eye contact. When his hands touched bare skin, I leaned in as if I had been waiting. I gently pushed him onto the cushions and climbed into his lap, settling with slow certainty. His breath was caught as I moved against him, steady and bold. I rolled my hips once, just enough to make him tense beneath me. "He still believes that this is a bad notion," I whispered, but he did not respond. I moved again, moving more slowly and deliberately. He responded with kind hands that were firm at my sides, holding me in place while we moved in sync. He did not rush, but rather allowed the tension to build. With each shift, he was closer to losing control. I leaned in, brushing his ear with my lips, and then stopped pretending. His hands moved across my back and down again, exploring carefully as the air thickened. The pull between us tightened. I pressed in again, this time with greater force, and he exhaled sharply through his nose, causing his head to tilt back and his chest to heave. Immediately, I felt him falter, and I climbed off of him. I slowly retrieved my shirt from the floor and reattached it as if nothing had happened. He sat there, unsure of what to do next. I casually suggested that he join me for dinner that evening. Rick's expression was completely altered as he glanced over my shoulder at you, Jake, and Tyler. I poured a glass of water and took a sip, stating that I would handle the cooking. He did not speak, but rather stood there for a moment, his lips parted in shock. He then turned and walked out without a word. The knock came shortly after 6, with one sharp sound followed by 2 slower ones, as if someone was unsure whether to be polite or confident. Rick had not said a word when he had left earlier, but I was certain that all 3 of them would arrive. I opened the door. Rick was unflappable as usual in the foreground, while Jake stood behind him, attempting to avoid my gaze. Tyler took a step back, shifting his weight from foot to foot as if he still had time to run. I smiled as they quietly entered the house, each one more uncertain than the last. I was wearing a light, short, strapless dress that was smooth enough to catch the light when I moved. There was nothing underneath, and there were no apologies. The table was set, and the music was playing in the background. The lights were low and the lights were softer than usual. I played the perfect host, and I hugged each individual as if nothing was unusual, as if I had not had my legs across Rick's this morning. I sat between Rick and Jake. Tyler across from me, shoulders tense, eyes darting. He kept trying not to look. He wasn't doing a great job under the table. I let my leg press lightly against Rick's. When he didn't react, I pressed in again, this time slower. His hand twitched once, that was all I asked. Jake, about his week, brushing his arm as he answered, turned to Tyler and asked if he was still seeing that girl from last summer. He blinked, stammered, shook his head. I nodded like it was nothing, but my fingers were already drifting along Rick's leg. Every minute at that table wound tighter. My voice dropped lower. My smile lingered longer. I topped off their glasses without asking. Jake kept glancing at my legs. Tyler continued to sway in his seat, while Rick remained steadfast. I could sense the shift in him with each breath. When dinner was finished, I stood to clear the plates, urging them not to move. I softly said, "I will be back shortly." I returned to the kitchen at a slower pace than before, and the empty plates were left forgotten. All 3 were still seated, quietly alert, and watching me as if they were uncertain whether this was still a meal or something else entirely. I halted beside the table, catching Rick's gaze, Jake's gaze, and Tyler's gaze. I then reached for the hem of my dress and lifted it over my head in a single, precise motion. There were no words, only silence and breath. All 3 of them were frozen. Jake's eyes widened. Tyler appeared to have forgotten how to breathe, while Rick's fists curled tightly around his thighs. I walked slowly and steadily toward Jake, allowing the moment to unfold with each step. I leaned in and kissed him slowly, confident that Jake's hands were already at my hips. As I sat in his lap, his breath warmed the side of my neck. I gradually relaxed, allowing his clothing to loosen enough for me to feel him beneath me. The quiet rustle of fabric filled the silence. As I remained seated, his grip tightened, his fingers pressing against my waist, and his head sank back. With a sharp breath, I moved against him, remaining steady and concentrated, allowing each movement to develop. He met each shift with urgent energy, and his lips touched my shoulder and chest. I murmured softly as he rose quickly against my back. "Don't hold back. Let yourself go," and he gave in. His hand slid along my sides, holding me closer. With every roll of my hips, the couch creaked beneath us, our bodies moving in rhythm, tension growing. I could feel how close he was, his legs tensing, his breathing quickening, but I didn't slow down. Instead, I turned my head. "Rick," I said low and clear. He'd been watching the whole time, still fully dressed, jaw set, gaze steady. The moment I reached for him, he stepped forward. I unfastened his belt, slowly sliding the fabric lower. Eyes locked steadily on his, he stepped free with calm control, though the tightness in his expression gave him away. Still moving over Jake, I leaned forward slightly and brought Rick closer. His hand rested lightly at the back of my head as I leaned in, pressing soft kisses against him, teasing gently. The space was filled with breath and movement, all of it thick with rising tension. I drew back slightly, murmuring, "Stay close," before turning to the one who had not moved. One hand was braced on Jake's chest, while the other rested on Rick's hip. Tyler, still fully dressed, still sitting on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure what to do. I slid off Jake, heat still thrumming through me, and crossed the room slowly. Tyler didn't react until I kissed him, gentle coaxing. That's when he finally exhaled. I slipped his shirt off and watched his chest rise in uneven waves. Then I knelt, unfastening his pants with care. Before taking his hand in mine, he followed quietly as I guided him to sit. I lowered to my knees in front of him, breath steady, and leaned in close, pressing a slow kiss against his hip before gently teasing further. His whole body jolted, hands tightening at his sides, legs drawn tight. I kept one hand on his thigh, the other behind me for balance. Rick returned behind me, his hands resting at my waist. He then moved in close, his body pressing cautiously against mine. I gasped softly, adjusting my balance as I settled into the new rhythm. Rick anchored me from behind, and I matched each slow and measured motion as I continued to accompany Tyler, allowing the weight of the moment to coil around all three of us. After a brief period, I stepped back and turned. Tyler remained seated, his respiration trembling. I climbed into his lap and eased down, slowly adjusting until I was fully settled. He gasped, unsure, his hands hovering before finding my waist. I reached back and Rick joined again, moving closely behind me. I arched to meet them both, finding a new rhythm as they moved in sync. Then I reached out. Jake was kneeling nearby, watching. I extended a hand and he stepped closer. I wrapped my fingers around him, moving my hand gently, slowly, deliberately. His breath stuttered as he leaned forward, kissing the side of my neck, his hands brushing my thighs. I wasn't done. I rose and took Jake's hand, guiding him to lie on the floor. Then I straddled him, facing away, and settled myself gently into place. I took a moment to reorient myself during the process of settling into motion. Rick was still observing me when I beckoned him with a glance. He stepped forward, carefully positioned himself, and moved close to the front, joining our rhythm. With one hand on my hip and the other brushing my cheek, I braced myself against his chest as I rocked between them. Jake is situated beneath me. I turned to Tyler, who was still standing and watching. I said, "Come here," in a soft voice. He stepped forward, and I reached out to greet him gently. My body remained in motion as I greeted him. Rick was above each movement, sending heat spiraling upward. Rick pressing above, Jake moving below, and Tyler trembling in my palms. Tyler was the first to shudder, and his breath quickened as tension was released. I held him until he was finished, then gently let him go and returned my attention to Rick. My hands were pressing against his chest as the final wave began to rise. Jake's grasp tightened, his body pressing close as tension surged until he finally tensed sharply. His breath quickened. Rick followed a few moments later, and his arms encircled me. His body shook against mine, and I followed, my back arched, my breath dispersed. The heat surged and tension broke in, reverberating through me as the moment overtook me. I did not move. I remained in Rick's arms, Jake's chest beneath me, and Tyler's hand, which was still resting beside me. I was held breathless and exactly where I desired to be. If you were sitting at that table when she returned, how would you have handled the situation? Would you have waited for her to approach you, or taken the lead? Please provide me with the specifics of your actions. I will be reading them. Like what you heard. There's plenty more heartbreak and secrets to come. Hit like, subscribe, and stay curious with Tangled Truths.